Hi everyone, welcome. We are back again with a new series. This time talking on mental health, of course. This is our foundation, reality, and you. Today we have with us a speaker, and we are going to primarily bring about issues of mental health, especially with women. So we have Mrs. Srilata Shrikant. She is very experienced, and I think has done a lot of work with not only women but other populations as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Srilata. I'm going to hand it over to you to just start telling us about the little work that you have done for the contribution of mental health in India.
Sure. Thanks so much, Shraddha, for having me here in the first place. So I have been in the field for about 20 years now. I was a late starter. I had done my post-graduation in sociology when 20 and got into psychology at 40. But it has been a wonderful 20 years. A bulk of my initial work was with children and parents because I was associated and I'm still associated with Prafulta, which is a Don Bosco initiative. And I'm also on my own in private practice. And there are clients across all age groups. Increasingly, a bulk of the clients that I meet are adults. My special interest is in working with women specifically. I think it began being a parent in the first place and then relating to other women and the concerns that they may have. And though, of course, I do meet males as well. And yes, in the last couple of years, I'm trained in, and I'm currently training in REBT. You're already an associate fellow and supervisor, and I'm currently in training to do the associate fellowship and supervision in REBT. And that's where I stand very briefly.
So, Srilata, we are going to dive into our topic because we have limited time. What I have observed is, in the pandemic, of course, we've, as a country, we are overcoming the stigma related to mental health. We also have seen that primarily it has been, I don't want to be gender biased, but I genuinely feel it is women who have primarily bear the brunt of not only handling the household, working from home, managing the kids. It's been an exhausting experience for some people who I have spoken to. What has been your experience in the last year?
I think I would completely resonate with what you say. I think it has been particularly stressful for women because, as you said, in a number of households, it is not every family member, specifically the male or the partner, who chips in with the household chores. And whether it's a woman who's just a primary homemaker or someone who's a professional and managing both home and work, it has been extremely stressful because of the physical load that continues to be borne by them with the least amount of support, plus going through their own physiological and other issues that are peculiar to each one being a woman, being, various stages in the reproductive cycle, and, whether the woman is pregnant or whether the woman is perimenopausal or postmenopausal or in menopause. So it adds another layer to the kind of problems that women are facing, apart from the ones that you talked about, for sure. Yeah.
Right. So in terms of depression, anxiety, we also see women, being more vulnerable enough, courageous enough, coming for seeking help. It is the macho man and the woman who is more vulnerable and empathetic and, maybe weak in some sense, as society calls them, who comes for help. Have you seen the trend changing?
Definitely. And, it's, I think, a wonderful feature also is to see primarily youth, in the age group of, say, 18 to 35, 40, I think that they have been in the forefront of being more vocal about mental health concerns. In fact, in the last year, I've had more referrals from youth for their parents, contacting me for counseling for their parents than I've ever had in the years before. So yes, the sad part is also the fact that, when we're talking specifically of women, that the prevalence rates for depression and anxiety are particularly higher among women than males as a whole. And I guess as we're talking, we can also be addressing the reasons why and things like that.
Yep.
But yes, I do agree that, there is more talk about it, and there are a number of cases that have come up voluntarily and otherwise, where mental health conditions are being in the forefront more and more than ever before. Yeah.
And like you said, so the reasons for the same would be, women are more open to talking about emotions, expressing their feelings.
Right.
They may be biologically
Right.
disposed to, premenopausal, perimenopausal symptoms. So do you see any other factors that may be responsible for this?
So we can't, as you said, apart from the hormonal, the biological factors, we can't ignore the psychological, social factors that are there. The gender disparity and, the gender aspect of being a woman and what it means to be a woman, the power imbalance that can be there between male and female. Apart from, the patriarchal system, for example, that is prevalent in a number of families, although change is happening, but these are very, very superficial sometimes, or slow. Yeah. So those are other factors. The fact that, right from the time a girl is born, the very fact that it is a girl, it's a girl child and not a boy, that can be still prevalent even across educated families, that can still be there. So it starts right from there. And yes, I think, as you said, women are naturally supposed to be the emotional caretakers of the home. And the nurturance and the caregiving aspects are what are encouraged a lot. And I was reading an article, and they had a very interesting point of view when talking about this, and about how women may have problems later when they're working and managing family life. And they said that for a number of males, being a breadwinner is also perhaps perceived as part of a parental role. So whereas for the woman, these can be two separate things, and these may not be combined, and therefore there can be intense conflict for a woman when she has to manage being a parent and being caregiver plus managing the professional responsibilities. So yes, we can't ignore a number of these social factors, the lack of support from home, also like I said, at different stages in the reproductive cycle, what the woman goes through physiologically as well, how responsive the family is in case there is a mental health concern. Is help given early on, or is there delay in seeking help, particularly for a woman? And being a woman, very often mental health concerns can initially manifest as somatic concerns, and they may not be deemed as serious enough. So help seeking can come in much later. Shraddha, am I there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello?
I thought I'd lost, because my screen is frozen here right now. I wasn't too sure whether you could hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. So like you said,
am I there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
There are a lot of concerns, like you said, and often enough we hear women, complaining of feeling a lot of guilt and shame, guilt of not being there at all times, in multitasking in their different roles. There's a lot of shame whether I am actually a good enough mother or a good enough employee or a good enough wife. And, sort of juggling these roles becomes very, very tiresome.
Yeah.
So yes, I was talking about guilt and shame, the two primary feelings most often felt by women of, not being able to be a perfect mother, a perfect wife, or a perfect, employee, and that feeling of I'm not good enough, and will I ever be good enough in my role?
Yeah, that's right. And when you talk about, not being able to be the perfect mom or the perfect wife or the perfect daughter, I think you're referring to so many internalized attitudes that we have learned, it's part of the socialization when you're growing up. And sometimes they're so deep, and we are not even aware that we are functioning from those attitudes. So there's this constant feeling, therefore, among many women of not being enough in many ways. It could be not being good looking enough, right, from appearance, to not being a good enough employee, to not being a good enough mother, to constantly feeling that she's letting down other people in her life. And very often it stems from, this attitude that, we've got to place others as central, as primary, and then, we become, our interests take second place.
Right.
And to the extent that, when I do start taking care of myself a little more, and I want to even express that I want to take care of myself. And it could be little things like, maybe just going to the salon instead of sitting with the son's homework,
Right.
Or going for a swim and then coming back, and, or not joining the family in something that they are doing. And then the woman, starts feeling, am I being selfish? Am I being too self-centered? And so guilt coming from the constant thing that, I've let down other people, or I've, not lived up to certain values or principles that I'm told are very important as a woman,
Right.
And a lot of it stemming from woman being the primary caretaker of the house or the pillar of the house.
Right. And so, we see what are the issues that today, I've seen, I've read a lot about something called compassion fatigue. You said that women are the primary caretakers, and over time, taking care of your children and your spouse and your husband, and then collapsing at the age of 40, 45, the middle age.
So true.
So, and there's a compassion fatigue phenomena there. So, what would you elaborate on that?
Yes, as you said, by the time the woman reaches midlife, and, let's assume she's married in her 20s or mid 20s, and, the children are grown up by then, and she's given her all to the family and to work. And she's now reaching a point where now she is going to become the primary caregiver for her aging parents.
Yes.
A lot of transitions that happen at that time. So midlife typically is a time when, we kind of take a life audit. We are looking at the credit debit side of our lives and saying, where am I at now? And, do I look back on life till now and see it with a sense of loss and regret? Or, am I fairly pleased and contented with the way things are going? What is it that I would like to change? Can I change things at all? Is it too late? It's also the time when, because parenting role probably becomes a little secondary.
Yes.
If the children are grown up, then the spousal issues come to the fore. So if there were spousal issues, it gets sort of buried a little bit in the caretaking of the children and bringing up nurturing of the children. And now that buffer is gone. So then this comes to the fore as well. And then, like I said, taking care of the elderly. So yes, and the multiplicity of roles that the woman has to play at all times. And now some more added on her plate with more caregiving. And so, yes, it is not surprising that, you can feel fatigue and exhausted with the demands placed on you.
Right. And so often enough, we do see higher rates of depression, when the woman comes into her middle age. How would you, what are some...
Sorry, I lost you for a bit there.
Yeah. So I said, we do see higher rates of depression at that time. And how would you, sort of help a middle-aged woman maintain her work-life balance even now, during the pandemic? It's still going on. Our cases we are going through a second wave. So how, can we help women sort of help themselves?
Yes. So let's say this. So we are saying that, there is a primary layer of a problem, be it a patriarchal system or the extra demands on the woman, especially during the pandemic and even otherwise. But we are specifically talking of the pandemic. So now, given this problem, and if I add another layer to it by bringing attitudes of perfectionism or, having to place others people's needs first and putting myself always behind and, needing the approval and validation of other people, then what I'm doing is I'm getting two problems for the price of one. And my problems are manifold then. So what's not in my control totally are the attitudes of other people and what they do and certain systems that exist. Not totally in my control in terms of how much I can change them. But what is in my control is what I bring to the whole package. And, so I would say that to the extent that you can let go a little bit of your perfectionism. If the house is a little messy than usual, let go. If the children are not, for example, you're a parent and the children are not attending their class or not doing their homework as is expected to be done, let go. you can't be taking on and feeling overly responsible for the feelings of others all the time and feeling very apologetic for taking care of yourself. So I think this is something that women can do. Keep appealing to the spouse. If the spouse is not very supportive, or the family, don't hesitate to ask for help. Sometimes women are also hesitant to ask for help because they feel that, many women are not very assertive. They also feel extremely uncomfortable asking for help and putting it out there because they're probably afraid or a little concerned about the responses of other family members.
Right.
But I would say that, take a risk and put yourself a little bit out there. Not being silly, but I'm saying if you don't ask, you don't get help. So you may as well verbalize and put it out there. Otherwise, you're number one, you're going to be stuck with the hypothesis that nobody is ever going to be helping me, and you never get a chance to check that out. And second, maybe there is going to be some relief that you're going to get, and you're depriving yourself of that.
Right.
So,
you put up an important point of letting go, but often enough people say that, if I let go, my child is not going to perform and it's going to be my responsibility and I want my child to achieve certain things for me.
That's right.
I think that letting go phenomena is not accepted.
Very, very hard.
Yes.
I agree, because it is so closely tied to the attitude that, my children's successes and failures are directly related to how well I fare as a mother. So I'm attributing, their failure to my failure as a parent, or their success largely to, but I may not attribute their success to the efforts that I may put in. And that's the risk that, if your worth is dependent on the performance of your children, then, number one, they constantly have to be doing well in order that you be happy.
Yes.
You can never be assured about that because that's not in your control.
Right.
Whether they study or don't is what they do. So what I mean by letting go is not just, resigning yourself to the fact that, if they study, if they do, if they don't, just sit back and relax. That's not what I mean. What I mean is make an effort to put across your point of view. But as parents, I think the hardest task for us is to accept the fact that even our sphere of control on our children and influence on our children is limited.
Yes.
Beyond a certain point, if my adult child will not save, money in the bank and he's going to spend crazily, well, I can be advising him every day because I think that, as a parent, I have to do that. But I can't make him be more responsible with his financial savings. Similarly, I can't make my child study. So when you, at least don't put gun to head and insist that, this is your role as a parent, I have to make that person change, then it lets you be more moderate in your emotions. And you come to a point where you say, okay, let me see what I can change here and what I can't, and focus on the things that I can work on.
But Srilata, like you said, the whole society pressure on women, and that's been a very conditional pressure, that she keeps the house well, she keeps her children well, she keeps her family well. And how do we start changing this trend? How do we help women? Like you said, women are not assertive enough. And I've seen very, very strong women in their careers who are assertive, relaxing completely. So how do we maintain, because society cannot change in a span of 12 months through the pandemic. How do we change these intrinsic themes?
So one, I think it is for each woman perhaps to step back if she's feeling very, very disturbed about things going on. Maybe stepping back and asking herself, what's really going on here? What is it that I want to happen? If I'm wanting, say, more personal autonomy and more choices in the household, is that something that I am ready to ask about? So self-awareness in terms of where I am right now, I think would be primary. Second, I think, trying to understand what are the limits of change. Third, along with self-awareness, second, I would put it as permission to change certain things. Giving oneself the permission at whatever stage, whether you're in your 30s, 40s, even 50s, perhaps, to look at, okay, what is it that I would like to change? And is it okay for me to not feel selfish and self-centered? And, can I look at it more like self-care if I want certain things to change? For example, if I want more me time, is it okay for me? Can I try that out? Can I be a little more risk-taking perhaps? Can I be, and assertiveness is part of the risk taking.
Sure.
And so I'm saying, awareness, acceptance of the limitations, but also giving oneself permission to explore what one can do, I think would be starting points. Because then we can look at realistically what is possible in my house to change.
Right.
In some other person's household, maybe there are a lot of things that can be changed, but that depends on individual homes.
Right.
But at least the recognition of what you're doing to yourself, I think, is important.
And I think, the whole victimization of the Indian woman, that, oh, this happened to me, and my in-laws did this to me, and my husband does this to me,
Right.
and my parents did not let me study. How
Right.
does one deal with that? Because there's a constant, narrative of being a victim.
That's right. A lot of it, I think, stems from this pedestalizing of the woman, whether mother or wife or daughter, and so if somebody is put on a pedestal, then you are going to expect pedestal-like behaviors from that person. And
Right.
We are human and fallible. And, it is impossible to live up to that kind of a perfectionistic standard. So I think even accepting that we are human and that, we fail. Certain times we fall flat on our faces and, that we cannot live up to that kind of image that somebody else has decided for us. And what is it that I want to be? What's the kind of image that, I am looking at that is more realistic and perhaps doable? So I'll be probably looking at something. So then I won't victimize myself. I won't look at myself as either being at the top of my game or then being down in the doldrums and, good for nothing and worthless. I may be in the gray, where I may look at myself as sometimes achieving, sometimes failing, but learning through whatever I am doing and improving upon myself.
And like you said, empowering yourself. I think there are few choices that need to be made. But I think this whole Indian women saga believes in not having choices at times. And I think the youth currently who are educated and affirming and being assertive on the choices that they are making towards, their life. We've definitely seen that change currently. With the Me Too coming up, we've seen a lot of norms and protection coming for women in general.
Yeah.
So, how do we empower even, women from basic homes, not only metropolitan cities, but from smaller cities, to understand that there is a fundamental rule of choice?
So what I do see also is that change is happening, whether we like it or not. Change definitely is happening. It's happening slowly, sometimes very superficially. So I think education has been responsible in more ways than one to expand women's horizons and to be able to look at a world beyond their own cocoon of home and hearth.
Yes.
So I do certain kinds of work that take me sometimes to the interiors. Yes. And what I have found is that even girls from there, once when I asked a 24-year-old nurse in training, and I said, and she said she's going to do her master's. And I said, what about your family? Is marriage not on the cards? And she said, that may be on their card, but it is not on mine. Yes. And so, when you talk of empowerment, I think doing the doable within the limitations that you have, I think is a good enough start. Rather than looking at what all I should be doing by now and looking at it with deep depression or, a sense of hopelessness, why not look at within my ambit, what are the one or two things also that will make me feel that, that I am an agent of change for myself in the smallest possible way, and I think that's probably how we need to go about it, because there is no universal prescription for every woman that would work. It's not like a cookbook thing, So yes, I would imagine so. And I do think education and, the fact that when women step out of their homes and they work, I think their expansion of their perspectives, I think all these are giving rise to changes.
Right.
But it creates, I think, also problems because sometimes males are not keeping pace with the pace of change that women are keeping,
right. Right.
which also happens.
So
Yeah.
how do we help, while going through these transitions, while the empowerment is happening, how does one maintain your biology, the hormonal issues, the psychological
Yeah.
issues that are
Yeah.
very, very related. So
Yeah.
we know of the postpartum depression as well, post-pregnancy.
Correct.
How do we handle
Yeah.
these things? Is it very
Yeah.
important to seek therapy earlier in life?
Right. So, when you talk of biological, physiological, then I think, the minute you are experiencing those changes or certain somatic complaints, rather than resting or telling yourself that, and if these are chronic and persistent and troubling for you, I think seeking medical help, I think, is very, very important. So, whether it is seeking medical help of a GP, or whether it means visiting a psychiatrist if there are emotional problems that are concerned, or a counselor and a clinical psychologist that you need to be talking to. I don't think we can afford, those who can afford therapy will have access to therapy. But there are also a lot of, I think, institutions where
Yes.
help is available at a nominal cost.
Yes.
And a lot of counselors and therapists are also open to the idea of a sliding fee wherever a client puts across to them, that I really need this help and can you look at a reduced fee? So I think, availing of that help for oneself definitely, I think, is on top of the list. Even before you start doing something for yourself, but you need to have the emotional and physical resources to be able to do those practical things that you want to do.
Right.
So I think
and while we're talking about the biological changes, pregnancy by itself is a huge transition in a woman's life. And with COVID coming in, it has highlighted the anxiety levels. Will I be okay? Will my child be okay? Will there be COVID positive? The whole concept of, delivering a child in a hospital with COVID now, is very difficult.
That's right. It is. Even at the best of times, there are some women who may have a lot of anxieties, even prior to pregnancy. For example, even the very fact that, did I have a choice in this? Did I exercise a choice? Did I want a child now? Okay. Right. So you're already getting into pregnancy with a certain mindset and certain emotions that are there, right? And then through the course, is the family supportive? Am I able to get the rest and nutrition that I would require at this phase of life? If I'm working, am I able to balance both, or is it taking a toll on me? As you said, during the pandemic, if I'm pregnant and not getting enough support, and work pressures are high, plus the physical pressures, because many times women are not expected to give up their role of caretaking, irrespective of other things that they may experience. And whether you have a mental health issue or you're pregnant, you're expected to go on, and automate in like almost. And so, yes, it can add tremendously to pressures, plus the hormonal changes that also take place as a result of, pregnancy. Can I take this further? I mean,
please go ahead.
Because, well, we can, this is also then about postpartum depression that can happen. And many times we are talking of feelings of feeling low, feeling hopeless, not feeling motivated enough. Very often it can be dismissed as, well, just blues, that'll go. Right. But then there's a clear distinction between postpartum blues that may just last for a few days or a week at the most, and they may go, versus, say, postpartum depression that can be there, maybe immediately or maybe a month down from pregnancy, and that can last up to 6 months or 12 months or even later. And the reason it's important is that it's going to affect your caregiving to the child. It's going to affect the mother-child relationship, your spousal relationship, your relationship with the family, and your own sense of your self-worth, which many women attach to their role as parent. So yes, this is very, very important.
And I think you brought about this whole important issue of, whether I have the choice to have the baby or whether it's an external pressure that has been put. And I want to bring out here that a lot of time women feel that sex in marriage, is something that they are forced into, or it is mandatory and we don't have a choice. Right. Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. And that's what I mean, So at some point, if constantly there is this feeling of let's say a dissonance between what you stand for as a person, what are the values that you cherish as a woman, and the actual roles and how they are being played in your life. And if we don't give ourselves the time to think about it but sweep it under the carpet, at some point it's going to catch up with you, and you are going to feel very disturbed about it. And so sitting with yourself and reflecting about what are the values that really really matter to me. Can I go after them now? Can I not go after them because there are practical considerations? My family setup is patriarchal. I can't do XYZ that I would like. You know, at least then what would happen is that your choices would be more conscious rather than feeling forced into doing something. So if I'm saying that, well, I can't work now, right now, because what, I do want to, but there are these limitations right now. So let me see in what other way my creativity, for example, can be catered to.
Right.
What else can I do if I can't step out of the home? You'll allow yourself certain other ways of thinking about the same problem. And maybe there are some choice opening things that'll come up for you.
And what about, women who, like we said earlier, that we've defined our identities, by our home and your husband and your kids, and beyond a certain point, once they are grown up or you lose your spouse, you lose that sense of, what am I living for in life? What is the meaning to my life?
That's right.
So how will such women sort of redefine themselves? Because there's a lot of loneliness and void, and I think that's happening right now.
You're absolutely right. When you talk of the loneliness or the sense of alienation that you feel even from family, and that sense of I've given so much, and what have I got at the end of it? And does the family even recognize some of my needs at this point? Are they in tune with it? Right. Or are they like, well, what are you cribbing about? You have everything else going for you. Yeah, so it can, make a woman, but these can be triggers for a woman feeling very, very disturbed.
Right.
One thing I would say is that, well, it's never, ever late to start anything in life. Of course, in certain professions and certain careers, definitely there are age limits to starting or competing or writing an exam and things like that. But that's where I'm saying, so this thing of doing the doable for me seems to be a very realistic way of looking at things, because then I'm exploring right now in my life, given the limitations of parenting and aging parents or in-laws, and circumscribed by the system that my family follows in terms of a lifestyle, what is it that I can still do? Particularly during the pandemic, what we are also seeing is that there are lots and lots of courses, for example, that are online, which we didn't have access to earlier.
Right.
So even if I can't go out there and do something, can I do a course or two? Right. Can I just keep myself intellectually stimulated?
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say that there are a lot of women who have sort of, sustained their families while their spouses have lost their jobs or their children have lost their jobs.
Right.
That is maybe some bakery or food products. And I think we've seen a massive rise in that, So in some sense, the pandemic has sort of challenged women and their teams, gone out and, performed and outperformed in these challenging times.
Absolutely so. And Shraddha, I think you would agree that, that is possible only if, emotionally, I feel in charge of myself and I'm stable enough to make those choices.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm probably going to feel depressed, feel hopeless, and, feel out of my depth with all the challenges that COVID brings in its wake.
Right. And I just want to highlight this issue of, like we said, sometimes I've seen a lot of role rehearsal right now in the pandemic. Having said that, there is also, women who may be earning more than men today. So, and this whole comparison and discrepancy and, conflict associated with that.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. With women, am I there, Shraddha?
Yeah.
Am I there? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So yes, there are women who are breaking the glass ceiling in more ways than one. And they are in senior positions in management and in various other areas of life, and often doing far better than their spouses or their partners.
Right.
And yes, one can either feel guilty about it, and feel anxious, because I'm not supposed to be the one who's leading. I'm supposed to be the one towing the line or being on par. I cannot be the one leading, financially. So that can just add to my distress. Or I can feel unhappy about the fact. Suppose it really matters to her that, the husband is living off her earnings but not doing anything, for example, or not doing something worthy enough. Yeah. So that can cause some amount of unhappiness. But I guess, for each woman to not feel guilty about the fact that she's being successful, or that she's been assertive and breaking certain barriers and achieving whatever she is achieving, because she has done it for herself and has given herself permission to break certain barriers and go ahead. Yeah.
Right.
But yes, regarding the fact that the male may not keep on par with her, I guess, these circumstances are so different, and how they play out in each household could be very, very different.
Right.
But at least the least you can do is not feel depressed and guilty for yourself about where you are at, I think.
Sorry. And I just want to, talk a little bit about, sorry, women getting stuck in their past. There's been a lot of trauma, abuse. There's been a lot of, we know a lot of women stay in households where there are, a family of 6 to 8, joint families, a restricted room. Yeah. And I think these have been tough times, challenging times with the lockdowns coming in. So how does one deal with the trauma? Because a lot of women are stuck in, an agitated depression, with their past.
Yeah. So I think, looking back can, and we are talking of, as you said, very real life scenarios where these are, and many times it's also many elements of those continue into the present. But I think what is in my control is when I look back and look at the person that I have shaped up into today, and suppose I say that, I'm like this because of what happened to me in my childhood or in my growing years. And, I could feel resentful. I could either be angry or feel constantly depressed about the fact, and maybe not give myself for re-scripting some of the things that I can re-script in my life right now. So I would imagine asking myself, what am I saying today to myself about what happened then? What do I want from life now? Are there some choices that I can give myself right now? And would it be okay? Or am I stuck in the past because, I can't let go of the resentment or of the anger? And, if you're really feeling very, very disturbed about it and can't work it out on your own, I would certainly, encourage women to meet a therapist, a counselor, and, to be able to break through those blocks and move ahead. Yeah, I think that's what I would say.
I think that here it's just striking to me that, most people have your sister or your cousin or your friend as your therapist. But I think therapy is a little more professional. You go to kitty parties and, went out whatever's happening in your homes. But I think at times in life, we all get stuck. And I think therapy helps in getting you unstuck with these emotions. Shrilata, just lastly, I want to point out is, like you said, there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of pressure, multiple roles. What could this, psychologically, mentally lead to if not taken well?
Well, if you're not taking it well enough, as we said, women, as it is, we have vulnerability upon stressor upon stressor. Physiological, biological, plus the social, psychological impact. So what it is going to do is that you're going to have adversity upon adversity that you'll have to take in your stride. And there are many women are not able to take that. And so your proneness to certain mental health conditions, be it anxiety, be it depression, being maybe psychosis, and or generally, even if we are not talking of those kind of things, just the sense constantly of feeling unfulfilled and deep resentment that play into you, or anger, and feeling blocked and stifled and not being able to express your voice or explore your potential to the fullest. I think that is that, so a constant feeling of feeling chained, which is not a very happy state to be in, or a good enough state to be in, even if I can't be like deliriously happy, but I can, be good enough in certain ways. And so if we don't take care of all these, and also it will impact upon me physically, because the mind-body connection is something that is well known. All of us know that. So it is also going to impact on me physically. So it's not going to be helpful overall if I either, bury these things or put it off to another day, or I feel too afraid of talking about these for fear that I might lose control over myself. And I think that's one of the prime reasons I also suggest that, talk to somebody who's trained, like Shraddha said. I think they would be able to help you to become unstuck and look at reasonably what you can do with your life, where you are at right now. Yeah.
Right. And specifically for middle-aged women, because we know the lockdowns have been released, men have probably gone back to work. Women who've been homemakers and, caretakers have lost their basic routine, going for walks, going to the temple, going for grocery shopping, meeting their friends. So what are some of, the activities that they can generate in terms of, increasing their motivation levels?
Right. All the things that you said, Shraddha, I think, well, if I'm at home, nothing prevents me from making that call to a friend that I dearly like. At the same time, maybe being careful about not talking to somebody who just generates a lot of negativity in you and who makes you feel dull and, feel even more chained than before. Talking to somebody who's more energizing, for example. Secondly, looking at maybe courses, certain things, something new to learn. Very often, even if you're enjoying what you're doing, sometimes there's this sense of monotony and boredom and routine that can set in. So doing one thing, maybe it's learning a language or learning knitting, or if you're a very cerebral person, then doing something physical. So it might be an online aerobics class, or it could be a yoga class, or just going for a walk. Maybe if you don't want to spend money, just go for a walk or a jog, or do spot jogging in the room that you are in. So I think looking at these kind of options, I think would be very, very important. What else?
I think I want to add to this is don't wait for the push, but create the push. Sometimes
right.
we are always waiting for the push and the appreciation and
so
validation.
True.
Yeah.
So true. And that, like we said, coming from me not placing my needs primary at all times, thinking of, but what will the family say, or is it okay within the family, and is it okay for me, even if many times it's not the family that's putting that pressure, it's the women themselves who put the pressure, and and they feel guilty about putting their needs first. Yeah. And to be able to say, no, I owe it to me. Self-care is very, very primary, and I can't, even if I want to be the good enough parent or the spouse or the daughter, if I don't take care of myself emotionally and physically, I can't be there for the rest of the people that are around me.
Right.
So I think all that you said is important.
I think, and I want to end it on a very, very personal note from you. So what was your journey that helped you challenge yourself and, re-inspire and rework and, reshape the brain to, identify some meaning to your life?
Absolutely. So as I said at the start, I joined MA Psychology at the age of 40 when I had 2 children, and my younger son was about 4 and my older son was about 10. And I had this thing that I was not happy with sociology and the various other things I had dabbled in. And so this came to a point where I was telling myself, this is ridiculous, me thinking of doing something outside the home at this point. I have 2 kids. Is that going to be possible? Two people who motivated me immensely was one, my mother, she was the first graduate in her village in Tirupati when she was young. And she told me, listen, there are always going to be these challenges. Children are there today, they'll grow up tomorrow. Don't be like me. I didn't do stuff. So she was one who said, just go for it. The other is my mother-in-law, who was there as physical support for me, even as I was doing the course. So I think I'm so glad I did that, Shraddha, because I feel that I might have felt otherwise a little listless. I may have felt that, I don't know what I'm, like we talk of feeling purposeful. I think this has lent a sense of purpose. And the fact that you can give yourself that choice wherever possible, whatever it is. For me, it was being able to do that. I was fortunate to have the support system. The second thing that, that I started late in life was exercise. And, I think gymming and exercise has been a very, very, very important part of life. And, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I only regretted that I didn't start it earlier in life. And I think, that I think is really important. Getting medical checkups done sooner rather than later is the third.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if I may ask, what was your internal self-talk to yourself, because the course may have been tough. Of course, I've gone through it, and at that age, juggling between kids and the household.
Correct.
What was your dialogue to yourself that kept the drive on?
Yeah. So one, I think, constantly telling myself it's never too late to start. Do what you can, and this has been, not very consciously, but do what you can with what you have and where you are. Doing the doable. So I may not have been the most efficient parent in those 2 years. I may have even lost my temper a couple of times with my kids, or left my home, a little dirty also maybe sometimes. But the fact that, the overarching thing at that time was to be able to do this. And this was an important goal that I set for myself. So which also means that I'm not being selfish at that time. This is something that's important for me and for my well-being right now. And, I want to be able to do this as best as I can. And it is very exciting when you tell yourself that and you explore something. You're prepared to take on the difficulties that come with it. Right. It meant sitting late into the night, finishing files. But, I knew tomorrow is another day and there's new learning and there's so much excitement getting back to the campus and to be a student again. So I think, most of my self-talk would be in that region, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would just want to give a term to this. I don't think it's being selfish, but I think it's being compassionate to yourself. So it's a lot to do with self-compassion, gifting yourself a goal which you can sustain or an identity which you can live with. Thank you so much, Srilata, for being here. And I think it was a very insightful conversation. We are going to leave your details on our YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to get in touch with her, we will be leaving her email ID for you guys, and you can get in touch with her directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shraddha.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, for asking very perceptive questions. And this is always something close to my heart. Thank you again.
Yeah.